You ever have that moment when the person you love most makes you feel like a punchline? Mine came the night my wife, Melissa, called me old news in front of her new boss and 20 coworkers, right before I made a decision that would change everything. But before I tell you how I handled that, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know in the comments what you would have done. Because this story isn't about anger. It's about clarity and what happens when someone finally stops being taken for granted. It started on a Friday night at an upscale rooftop bar in downtown Seattle. Melissa had just been promoted to marketing director, the biggest step in her career, and her company threw a celebration. I was proud of her, truly. She'd worked hard, and for years I'd been her biggest cheerleader. When she called me that afternoon, excitedly saying, "You have to come tonight, babe. It's important," I didn't hesitate. I wanted to be there, to support her, to remind her that behind all her late nights and deadlines was someone who still believed in her. The place was glowing, glass walls reflecting the city lights, waiters in black vests carrying champagne like liquid gold. Everyone looked sharp, polished, important. I showed up in my best suit, the one Melissa bought me 3 years ago for her cousin's wedding. She barely glanced at me when I arrived, just waved her hand with a distracted, "Hey, over here," while laughing with her boss, Evan, a tall, confident guy with movie star hair and the kind of handshake that says, "I've already won." I joined the group quietly, smiling, trying to blend in. She introduced me quickly. "This is Tom, my husband," and then turned right back to Evan. "No, the man who supported me through everything. No, the one who helped me get here. Just Tom." The invisible accessory. At first, I brushed it off. She was excited, maybe nervous. It was her night, after all. I grabbed a drink, mingled, even chatted with a few of her colleagues. But as the night went on, the jokes started. Little digs. Subtle at first. "Melissa tells us you're the quiet type," one woman said, laughing like that was a flaw. Another added, "You're lucky she puts up with you, Tom. She's a firecracker." Melissa didn't correct them. She laughed along. Then came the moment that changed everything. Her boss, holding a glass of champagne, raised it for a toast. "To Melissa," he said, "the woman who never stops surprising us." Everyone cheered. And then, grinning, he added, "So, what's your secret? How do you manage to do it all? The work, the social life, the husband." Melissa smiled that rehearsed, confident smile of hers and said, "Well, you know, it helps that my husband's low maintenance. He's like old news. Reliable, quiet, predictable, doesn't get in the way." The laughter that followed hit me like a brick. She wasn't joking, not really. You can tell when laughter comes from truth. I looked around. 20 pairs of eyes flicking between us, unsure whether to laugh harder or look away. Evan smirked, raising his glass. "Well, cheers to that. Every powerhouse woman needs a good house cat." My fingers tightened around the glass, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled, the kind of calm smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Inside, something shifted. Not anger, not jealousy, just finality. The quiet click of a door closing in my mind. The rest of the evening passed like slow motion. Melissa kept laughing, kept shining, completely oblivious to the storm brewing behind my polite expression. When the party finally ended, she turned to me, tipsy and glowing. "You were so quiet tonight. You could at least pretend to have fun." "I did," I said simply. "In fact, I think I learned a lot tonight." She grinned, not catching the edge in my voice. "Good. Maybe next time you'll loosen up a little." Next time. She had no idea there wouldn't be one. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, mumbling about work and future plans, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing that somewhere along the way, I'd become background noise in my own marriage. And I decided, right then, that it was time for a different kind of celebration. The next morning, the apartment felt colder than usual, even though the sun was shining through the blinds. Melissa was humming in the kitchen, making avocado toast and talking on speakerphone with one of her coworkers, bragging about how great the party was. She laughed as she said, "Yeah, Tom was there, of course. He's sweet, but not exactly the life of the party." I stood in the doorway, watching her from behind. Same woman, same voice, but she sounded like a stranger. When she finally hung up, she turned to me and smiled like nothing had happened. "Morning, babe. You were such a trooper last night." I sat down at the table, letting her words hang in the air. "You remember what you said about me yesterday?" She frowned. "What are you talking about?" "At the toast," I said evenly. "When you called me old news." When everyone laughed. She blinked like she was trying to recall a minor detail. "Oh, that? Come on, it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." That was her favorite phrase. "Don't be so sensitive." I used to laugh it off, but now it sounded like poison. I finished my coffee in silence. "Melissa," I said finally, "do you realize that every time you make me the punchline, you chip away at something important?" She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting." Everyone knew I was kidding. "Did you?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just gathered her things for work, kissed me on the cheek like it meant nothing, and said, "Let's not make drama out of nothing." Then she was gone, leaving me in a quiet kitchen that suddenly felt like a stranger's home. That I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. For years, I believed that supporting her meant sacrificing myself a little at a time. I thought love was about patience, understanding, endurance. But endurance without respect is just slow self-erasure. Around noon, I opened my laptop and started going through our shared finances, the joint accounts, the investments. I wasn't looking to leave just yet. I was preparing, quietly, methodically, like someone cleaning up before a storm. That weekend, she had another social event, a brunch with her team. "You should come," she said casually while putting on her lipstick. "It'll be fun, and it'll show everyone that you're not upset about the other night." I agreed. I wanted to see the people who laughed again. I wanted to see her in her natural habitat. The brunch was held at a trendy cafe filled with people who spoke in half-jokes and compliments with hidden barbs. Melissa was radiant again, soaking up attention like sunlight. I sat next to her, nodding politely as the conversation shifted to relationships. Someone asked, "So, Melissa, is Tom the jealous type?" She grinned. "Tom? Please. He's like a golden retriever. Loyal, harmless, quiet." Laughter again. That same ripple of amusement I'd heard at the party. This time, I smiled too. But it wasn't the smile of a golden retriever. It was the smile of a man building a plan in real time. After brunch, she went shopping with her friends, and I went home. I opened my desk drawer and took out an old notebook. I started writing down details, not feelings, not insults, just facts. Dates, comments, expenses, messages. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with them, but I knew it was time to stop reacting and start documenting. When Melissa got home, she was in high spirits. "You see, that wasn't so bad," she said, tossing shopping bags onto the couch. "Everyone loves you." I smiled. "Yeah, they sure do." That night, while she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't touch it, but the name flashing on the screen caught my eye. Evan. Her boss. A short message appeared. "You were on fire today. Couldn't take my eyes off you." My jaw clenched, but I didn't move. Another message followed. "You deserve better energy around you." The dots appeared again, then stopped. She must have replied from the shower. I heard the water running and her laugh. That same laugh she used at parties, the one that sounded like performance. I didn't read their conversation. I didn't need to. I already knew what it meant. When she came out, towel around her hair, I asked, "Everything good at work?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just tying up some projects." I nodded back. "Good. Keep tying them up." She looked at me suspiciously, then shrugged it off. Over the next few days, I kept my distance, polite but detached. I cooked dinner, paid bills, smiled when she talked about her job, but inside, I was somewhere else. I started backing up files, moving certain documents to a private folder, scanning receipts. I even went by the bank to open a new account in my name only. The clerk asked, Joint or personal? I smiled faintly. Personal. Very personal. By Thursday, Melissa noticed the change. You've been weird lately, she said. Are you mad about the toast thing again? No, I said. Just thinking. About what? She pressed. I looked her in the eyes. About who I am when you're not around. She laughed uncertainly. You're being dramatic again. I didn't reply. I just kept looking at her until she looked away first. That silence told me everything I needed to know. On Friday, she told me she was going out for drinks after work. Networking, she said, slipping on her heels. You don't mind, do you? Of course not, I replied. Have fun. When the door closed behind her, I stood in the living room surrounded by her perfume and the echo of her voice. I picked up my phone and made 2 calls, one to a lawyer, one to a locksmith. The lawyer was professional and calm. We can handle this discreetly, he said. No kids, no shared property. This will be straightforward. The locksmith was faster. Tomorrow morning, he said. We'll change the locks. I thanked him and sat down at the dining table, staring at the quiet space that used to feel like ours. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. That night she came home late, smelling of wine and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. She thought I was asleep when she slipped into bed, but my eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. In that silence, something inside me solidified into stone. She had her story, and I had mine. And mine was just getting started. Saturday morning began with the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Melissa groaned, grabbed it, and mumbled something about an early work call. She went into the kitchen still wearing her robe, pretending to be busy while her voice softened on the phone, playful, flirtatious. I listened from the bedroom doorway, expression calm, heartbeat steady. When she noticed me, she quickly ended the call and forced a bright smile. Hey, didn't see you there. Just some weekend planning for next quarter. I nodded, poured myself coffee, and sat down. The locksmith was due in an hour, but she didn't know that. She thought it was just another lazy Saturday, another day where Tom would make breakfast and pretend not to notice the cracks forming in the walls. By 9, the doorbell rang. Who's that? She asked. Maintenance, I said easily. Something about the locks sticking. She barely looked up from her tablet. The locksmith changed the locks in under 30 minutes while I stood there pretending to check emails. When he was done, I signed the receipt, gave him a tip, and watched as the old keys hit the trash can. Melissa didn't even notice. She was too busy scrolling through social media, laughing at comments from the same coworkers who laughed at me last week. Later that day, she announced she was going to meet a friend for lunch, someone from work. She didn't mention who, but I already knew. Have fun, I said as she grabbed her purse. Don't wait up, she added with a wink, like we were playing some kind of flirty game that only she understood. When the door closed, I exhaled slowly, then got to work. I opened the drawer where I kept my notebook, the one filled with dates, comments, receipts, screenshots. I added one more entry. Saturday, 12:10 p.m. Left wearing red dress. Said lunch with coworker. Then I packed. Not everything, just what mattered. Important documents, family photos, the watch my father gave me before he passed. I didn't plan to run away. I planned to reposition. My lawyer had advised waiting until the papers were ready to serve before confronting her, but I wanted to prepare my side of the battlefield. I spent the afternoon organizing evidence, labeling folders, making copies. The rhythm of it felt therapeutic. Every sheet I filed was another piece of my life I was taking back. She came home around 6, smelling faintly of wine and a cologne I recognized, Evans. She looked relaxed, glowing, careless. You should have come, she said, tossing her purse onto the couch. We went to that new bistro downtown. Amazing food. I smiled. Sounds like a good time. You're not mad? She asked, suspicious. Why would I be mad? You're networking, right? She hesitated, then shrugged. Exactly. Networking. That night, while she scrolled through her phone in bed, I opened my laptop and sent one quiet email to myself from her account. It wasn't snooping, it was insurance. Her messages with Evan weren't explicit, but they were intimate enough to paint a picture. Compliments, inside jokes, late-night emojis. No proof of physical cheating, but enough to destroy the illusion of innocence she loved to wear. When I finished, I closed the laptop, kissed her forehead gently, and whispered, "Good night." She smiled, half asleep, completely unaware that her mask was already slipping. Sunday morning, she woke up cheerful. "Let's go out today," she said. "Brunch, maybe some shopping." My treat. I agreed. The cafe was crowded, sunlight bouncing off glasses, the smell of coffee thick in the air. She chatted endlessly about work, her plans, her future. She barely mentioned our future. When the waiter brought the check, she pushed it toward me without thinking. "You got this." I looked at her and said, "Sure. Roommates split bills, right?" Her fork paused midair. "What did you just say?" "Nothing," I said casually, signing the receipt. "Just making an observation." On Monday, I went to the lawyer's office again. We finalized the paperwork, reviewed the timeline, and scheduled the serving date. Friday, he said, "She'll be at work, correct?" "Yes," I replied. "That's when she'll get the papers." He nodded. "We'll handle it discreetly." As I left the office, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't nervous or sad. I was ready. The week passed quietly. I didn't argue, didn't question. I cooked, cleaned, and even laughed at her jokes when necessary. Every night, she sat on the couch texting under a blanket, thinking she was hiding something. Every night, I pretended not to see. On Thursday evening, she came home late again, cheeks flushed, perfume stronger than usual. "Rough day?" I asked. "You could say that," she replied, dropping her heels by the door. "Evan and I had to go over some reports." "Late-night reports," I said, not looking up from my book. "You sound jealous," she teased. "Not at all. Just impressed with your dedication." She smiled, misreading my tone completely. The next morning, I left early for work. Around 3 in the afternoon, my lawyer texted one word: "Served." I took a deep breath, set my phone down, and stared out the office window. It was done. 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Her name flashed across the screen again and again. I didn't answer. A stream of messages followed: confusion, anger, denial. "What is this? Are you serious? You can't just blindside me like this." I turned the phone face down and continued typing at my desk, calm as a still lake. When I got home that evening, Melissa was waiting in the living room, pacing. Her eyes were red, her voice shaky. "You actually filed for divorce?" she said, disbelief cracking her tone. "You didn't even talk to me about it." I set my keys down slowly. "I tried talking to you," I said. "You told me I was old news." "That was a joke," she shouted. "You're blowing everything out of proportion." "Am I?" I asked quietly. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been living a single life with a husband as a prop. I just decided to stop playing the role." Her expression shifted from anger to panic. "Tom, please, we can fix this. You're overreacting. We've had worse fights." I shook my head. "This isn't a fight, Melissa. It's a conclusion." She tried to touch my arm, but I stepped back. For the first time, she looked small, uncertain, fragile. "You don't mean it," she whispered. I met her eyes. "I do. And the paperwork means it too." She sank onto the couch, silent, as I went upstairs. I closed the bedroom door, listening to the muffled sound of her crying below. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just felt finished. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Sunday morning sunlight crept through the blinds, lighting up the room that no longer felt like ours. Melissa was still asleep, curled up on her side, the faint traces of last night's tears drying on her face. I got up quietly, brewed coffee, and sat in the kitchen where this whole story had begun, the same table where I once believed our marriage was unshakable. The silence was comforting now. No forced laughter, no shallow small talk, just the sound of the clock ticking and my own breathing steady and calm. By the time she came downstairs, I had already packed 2 suitcases by the door. She froze when she saw them. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice still hoarse. "No," I said. "You are. The papers give you 60 days to find a place. I'm keeping the house." Her eyes widened. "You can't just throw me out." "I'm not throwing you out," I replied evenly. "I'm following the law. I'm respecting boundaries, something you never did." She sank into a chair, hands trembling. "Tom, please. I was stupid. I got caught up in work, in trying to impress people. I never meant to hurt you." I stared at her for a long moment. "You didn't hurt me, Melissa. You erased me. There's a difference." She cried again, but the tears didn't move me anymore. She'd cried before, after arguments, after cold nights of silence. But every apology had been followed by the same behavior. This time, the tears were just sound without meaning. I handed her a folder. Inside were printed copies of messages between her and Evan. She looked down at the pages, her face going pale. "You went through my phone?" "No," I said quietly. "I went through the truth." She tried to explain, to twist it, to turn every word into something innocent, but the words on those pages didn't lie. Compliments, late-night texts, plans for dinners that didn't include me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. The next few weeks passed like chapters closing one by one. Melissa tried different tactics: guilt, charm, nostalgia. She made dinners, left little notes, even started talking about therapy. I stayed polite but distant. Every gesture felt rehearsed, like she was auditioning for forgiveness. One evening, she brought home wine and 2 glasses, trying to recreate the early days when we'd sit on the porch and watch the sunset. "We can start over," she said softly. "I can be better." I looked out at the sky, painted orange and pink, and said, "You keep talking about starting over, but you never stop doing the same things." She didn't reply. The silence stretched long enough for the truth to sink in. When the divorce papers were finalized, we met at the lawyer's office. She arrived early, dressed immaculately, makeup perfect, as if she could still control the story with presentation. I walked in wearing the same gray jacket she once said made me look like a schoolteacher. She tried to smile. "I still can't believe it's ending like this." "It ended long before today," I said. The lawyer walked us through the final signatures. She hesitated before signing, her hand shaking. "Tom, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake." I nodded slowly. "So did I? I thought you'd never take me for granted." The sound of the pen scratching paper was the quietest ending I'd ever heard. When it was done, she stood up and said, "I hope you find someone who appreciates you." "I already did," I said, meeting her eyes. "Myself." She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being free." I walked out of that office without looking back. Months passed. The house grew quieter, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I fixed the leaky faucet, repainted the bedroom, replaced the old couch she always said was too dull. Every change made the space more mine. I started hiking again, something I hadn't done in years because she never saw the point. I rediscovered the joy of choosing my own meals, watching whatever I wanted on TV, sitting in silence without feeling judged. It was like breathing fresh air after years underwater. One Saturday morning, I ran into an old friend at the coffee shop. He'd been at that promotion party months ago. "Hey man," he said cautiously. "I heard about everything. You holding up?" "Better than ever," I said, smiling. He hesitated, then leaned closer. "You know, after you left that night, everyone was shocked." Melissa tried to laugh it off, but people stopped looking at her the same way. I nodded. "Actions have echoes." He looked impressed. "You handled it better than most guys would have." I took a sip of my coffee. I stopped fighting to be heard and started living to be respected. He clapped me on the shoulder. That's something most people never figure out. Later that day, I got a text from a mutual friend. "Saw Melissa at a restaurant with some guy. She looked miserable. Asked about you." I deleted the message without replying. That story was over. There was no satisfaction in her unhappiness, just confirmation that walking away had been the right choice. That night, sitting on the porch, I watched the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about how far I'd come from that night at the rooftop bar, from being the quiet husband holding his wife's purse while she mocked him to being a man who finally remembered his own worth. The wind was cool, carrying the faint sound of laughter from a nearby house. It didn't sting anymore. It reminded me that life goes on, and sometimes peace sounds like nothing at all. I took a deep breath, leaned back, and smiled. I didn't need an audience or a punchline. I had something better, my dignity. And as strange as it sounds, losing her was the best gift she ever gave me. Because sometimes the moment you stop chasing someone else's approval is the moment you start living your own truth. So if you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if the person you love treated you like a joke? Because one thing's for sure, silence can be the loudest revenge of all.